Good morning, everybody, to City Hall for this morning's meeting of the Assembly Police and Crime Committee. The main item of business today is a discussion with specially invited guests around the issue of violent crime in London. This committee will be publishing a report in the autumn, and this is our final piece of work around it to hear from yourselves. Members of the public, as ever, may wish to follow us on Twitter or join the discussion at hashtag Assembly Police. As usual, kindly turn to silent your phones or turn them off if you be good enough. Just run through some bits of business and then we can get to the main part of the meeting. First of all, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Assembly Member Duval and Assembly Member Copley substituting for him
welcome,
today.
Tom. Welcome. Item 2, declaration of interest. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations on item 2 and ask Assembly members as ever to declare any other disclosable interests that are not there detailed. Thank you very much. Item 3, summary list of actions. Can I ask the committee to note the completed actions arising from the previous meetings? Item 4, action under delegated authority. Can I ask the committee to note the recent action taken by me as chairman under delegated authority as set out in the report? And can we note our report, detained, not forgotten, healthcare and custody, and the summary of our site visit to Birmingham, which was the Friday before last. Colleagues can note that. Right.
Agreed.
Excellent. We'll get to the main part of the meeting. So again, thank you very much, guests, for coming along. I know you're all busy people, and we really, genuinely, really do appreciate it, because I know some were a little bit of short notice as well. So again, thank you very much for coming along. So the context of the meeting, as I said earlier, is the context of violent crime in London, the fact that we have had an unacceptable level of homicides reaching the 100, and also, notwithstanding that, the many other victims and the families of victims that have been affected. Violence has been rising for some years, but the spike this year is absolutely unacceptable. We've heard from the Commissioner in front of us that whilst it is stabilising, which is a word I don't like, the level is far too high. And we wanted to hear from you today around that. But what we want to hear about today, particularly in the time-limited time that we have, is about solutions and recommendations. We're going to be writing and publishing a report aimed squarely at the Mayor and by extension the Met about what Londoners, which we represent and many of you represent also, what the Mayor can do to address this. And we've heard a declaration yesterday by the Mayor about some money around a public health investigation. So we want to hear from you about solutions, and we're looking forward to very much around that, and I'm very grateful again that you've come along. Now, but the morning's going to be split. I'll set the scene. I have spoke to some of you personally already, but the morning is split into three sections. Sections about root causes of crime, sections about police and the community, and importantly at the end, about what City Hall and the Mayor can do. Each section will have an invited speaker to speak for 2 or 3 minutes. After that, colleague members will chair that half an hour, and I'd ask you to indicate. We are going to be tight for time. And it may well be that we've only got 2 and a bit hours, and I will uncharacteristically be quite stroppy about sharing it. So if I offend anyone, I'm sorry, but I want to hear from as many people as possible. If you don't get the chance to speak because we have run out of time, there will be a mechanism to write to us in case you didn't get the chance to say something that you really wanted to say. So we don't want to miss anything when we publish our report. So that's probably enough for me at the moment. So first of all, for the first 5 or 10 minutes, before we go into the 3 sections, I wanted very much to introduce, and we are blessed today to have the Mitson family from your experiences. And as a South Londoner, I was aware of the problems you had all those years before, and I'm delighted that you're both here, and perhaps you'd like the opportunity to really comment about how you perceive things may or may not have changed over that period through the work of yourself and your foundation. I don't know which one of you want to speak, and just introduce yourself. You've got a roving mic today, so they'll be heading your way when you're ready.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much indeed for inviting us along to speak. We're Barry and Margaret Mizzen, parents of Jimmy Mizzen, murdered 10 years ago in South East London. You just spoke about a spike, and this will be the worst year since 2008, the way things are going. We know we've only got a brief amount of time to talk, so stop me about halfway through, because it's important to hear from my wife.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I think give my wife's perspective as well. I think to add to your report, I've read through the drivers you've already recognised, and we would totally agree with those drivers. I think I would like to add to that the driver of anger. We're not speaking enough about anger, unrequited anger, the anger we see on our streets every day, and not just from young people, but from older people, causes of anger and perhaps managing that anger. I think as well, historically, about 100 people a year have been killed in London anyway, but they would tend to be domestic basis for that. And it would be a shame that this focuses entirely on the horrific instances with young people at the moment. So, you know, the overall homicide in London to be reduced would be a wonderful thing. I think for us, what we've learned over the years, we've now got the charity which we call For Jimmy. We've set up a programme working within schools, working with the most recognised of these schools, young people disadvantaged, whether it's through their behaviour or confidence levels. For us, part of that schools programme is about creating safe havens in local areas. We are predominantly focused at the moment in two parts of Lewisham, which is, you know, the borough that is very precious to us. Hopefully to what we've developed, the evidence we're gathering, we'll be able to present that this is what we've done, this is the outcomes, there's the evidence for that. Part of the schools programme are creating safe havens in local areas, working with the schools, local businesses, local police, local councils, to ask businesses to be places of safety should someone need them. City Hall is actually a recognised safe haven from many years ago. The importance of that is not so much the safe haven, but what's going on underneath that, and it's about community building. If we really want to make some changes here, we have to take the community along. As together, as Londoners, we have the power to create the sort of communities that we all want to live in. There's been far too much blame going on over the years. I'm not picking out any particular areas, but it's such an easy rhetoric. Well, lock them up, we blame this, we blame the parents or whatever it may be. If we can change that narrative, ever harsher punishment won't change this. There are issues, this is, you know, which again you've identified. If we can change that narrative, if we can get all of us pulling in the same direction, then we are very confident that changes can be made. What we found out within our charity, the work we do, the evidence we gathered from that. So we are optimistic that things can change if we want. Mr. Chair, it's not about what are you going to do, what am I going to do. You know, it's individual responsibility for all of us in London. So just like to encourage that. Thank you.
Barry, thank you. Margaret, thank you very much.
I come slightly different from Barry, really, because I speak about love, really, but if we go back to when we lost our son, it didn't just affect our family, it affected our whole community. In fact, it affected the whole of the country, really. And what have we seen in the past 10 years? We've seen a lot of people working very hard to make a difference. However, as we know, it has got worse. And I don't know why, but I do think young people are losing themselves slightly, and I think we have to look at that. But when we go into schools, the one thing we don't do is go in and tell them off. We don't go in and tell them to put their knives down, put their guns down, don't carry weapons. We go in first and foremost and tell them how much they are loved, how they are valued, and how they do matter. And that's what young people need to hear. They need to hear more of this. They need to know they are precious and how we feel that they are the special ones. But we also believe in our charity that our young people are the change makers. We can make recommendations, we can go and help them and guide them and inspire them, but the real changes in society will come from our young people ourselves. Let's listen to their voices more, because we tend to go and say what we think they need. But let's hear from them, let them tell us what they need, and I think that's where the changes will come. And let's stop blaming people. I hear so much that it's the government's fault, it's the mayor's fault, it's the police's fault. Well, actually, I don't believe that. I believe the government would want to make a difference. I believe the mayor is desperate. He has children of his own. The police, they have children. They want to stop these things. So let's stop blaming and let's start working together. Let's build our communities and let's make London the great place it really is. So thank you very much for inviting us.
Margaret, thank you. Barry and Margaret, thank you very much. Again, a good point really from Barry that this is a complex subject, but also we mustn't ignore the fact about the violence from domestic situations and the number of homicides from that are on an alarming level. So thank you very much for that. And I know that you will probably write, or if you haven't already, write in with submissions to our report, because that wasn't enough time to represent your foundation. I accept that completely. So we look forward to that. And again, thank you very much. We'll now go to the first section of the meeting, I mentioned it's in 3 parts, and this first part is around root causes and tackling the root causes. This is going to be led by Sian Berry. Sian, it's yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. So yeah, the question we're asking in this section is, where do we focus our efforts and how can we pinpoint the real root causes and tackle those? We've heard evidence, and there's talk all around London of what might be causing what is definitely an increase in violence and murder. But we're not sure. We want to hear from you what you think those root causes are. There are, the immediate causes: criminal, organised crime, drugs. We've heard of stories about social media being implicated, but also we've been looking at cuts to youth services, exclusions from education, and then even further down the line, family situations, poverty, violence there. So we want to hear from you about those kinds of causes and how we can focus our efforts to actually change them. So I wanted to introduce our speaker to start off this section. This is Courtney Brown. He's the founder and the CEO of Father to Father. He spoke very eloquently to us in Hackney about his work, and he's here now to speak.
Chair, and good morning, everybody. My name is Courtney Brown. I am the father, the CEO of Father to Father. I'm also the parent liaison officer and behaviour mentor in Cardinal Pole School in Hackney. I'm also a senior youth worker in Hackney and a co-sponsor of Black Socks. The reason why I've said all of this is because I think it's necessary I showed my background and where all my experiences come from. So my first thing I look at 3 strands: home, school and community. So I'm going to start with the home first. Some of the root causes I've seen speaking to young people in school are family breakdown. And what I mean by that is the fact that, one parent has left the home, the young person's coming to school upset, don't have nowhere to go to talk, and they start building up emotions inside. So I've seen that in school a number of times. One of my solutions with those young people is give them a safe haven that they can come and speak to and express their emotions before it leads into anger. So that's one of the things I've seen. The other couple of other root causes is domestic abuse again, I've seen, and mental health. What we're doing in our school at the moment, we've invited CAMS in so we can get the early intervention in and recognise the triggers so we can put the right services in place for that young person. But what we've also done is empowered the parents. So we've had programs in school where we've invited parents in so we can give them, so we can empower them by giving them knowledge of the triggers and where they can go, where they can signpost and get that early intervention in there. So that's a couple of, in terms of home, what we've been doing in the school. In school, as you touched on before, fixed term exclusions. What we've done in Cardinal Pole, we've turned that around by using restorative justice and again, building a relationship with the young people. So restorative justice come from the criminal justice system, but we've used it in school and we've had a reduction in fixed term exclusions and permanent exclusion. We've also used the young people as restorative practitioners. So they've learned how to manage their emotions, but they've also learned how to mediate between themselves as well without resorting to violence, which I believe, and the school believes, will make a difference going into the community. Also, what we've done in the school is worked with community organisations that are trusted and recognised in the community. For too long, we was looking at a school as just being in the community, when I believe that the school should be part of the community. So there are so much great organisations, voluntary organisations in the community that are trusted and that they can come in and deliver these workshops, not just to the young people, but also to the parents as well. One of the biggest things that I've realised, and Hackney has realised, is cultural competence. So I'm having the right person deliver the right service. So people that understand their community and understand their community and know and aren't judging the community. My own experience of that is, living in Enfield and new head teacher and actually witnessing my 6-year-old son being pinned to the floor by the head teacher, even though I was working with the school. On the back end of it, I realised it was a whole cultural understanding. He was seeing me from the unconscious bias thing and seeing me as a black man who, for him, the number of questions he was asking me, or asking my wife, whether I beat her up at home and everything, I was always questioning, why did you ask that? So where was his thought process coming from? So I think unconscious bias needs to be trained in the schools and actually in the wider community as well, cultural competency. I think that in terms of there needs to be positive role models. That's what we provide in Father to Father. I think, again, talking from experience in schools and my own experience, a lot of young people has talked to me about the absence of their father. Now, when I mean absence, I can talk about emotionally or physically, you know. And again, I understand that there's a lot of fathers out there working to try and provide, which touches into poverty, for their children. But when you're sitting down with young people and you can see them emotionally upset, crying because they want they want that connection, that attachment, then yeah, it is very frustrating and you feel emotional. And that's something I went through myself, not having my dad around, and you know, growing up in Tottenham, Broadwater Farm, not having my dad around and seeing the violence that was in the house from there, hence why I set up Father to Father. So those are just some of the things, so I know it's time we're working with. So that's my opening comments. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so we're opening up this topic on the root causes to the floor. If you put your hands up if you want to speak, then we've got roving mics. Fantastic. And I'd like to encourage the young people from Hackney to put their hands up at some point and speak, because I know they're here and they were great when we spoke to them before as well. So at the front here and then at the back, if that's okay. And please introduce yourself when you speak.
Hey everyone, can everyone hear me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, my name's Amani Simpson. I am the CEO and founder of a youth organisation called AVYard Inspires. We inspire young people through personal development, media, and also business. For us, I'm someone that got stabbed. So 7 years ago, I got stabbed 7 times in one go. And essentially, the mindset that I had then is completely different to the mindset I had now. I had to go through depression. I had to go through my own personal development to get there. And I think that when you look at the mindset that young people have, I echo what you said. A lot of us have lost our identity now. You know, we're not necessarily striving for anything positive. A lot of the, I guess, negative side of our street culture is creeping into our daily lives and our habits and the way that we behave. And I think that it's something that we need to try and counteract. That's not to say that everything is negative, but I think we need to give spaces for young people to explore their brilliance and, you know, unlock their superpowers, essentially. For me, I think that another thing that is missing is also we don't have many positive role models growing up. You know, that may be through kind of the lack of fatherhood, fathers in the home. It may be through to the people that we see on our TV, but we don't have a lot of positive role models. And I think that we need to provide platforms in our community. This is not something even necessarily that's going to be put on you, but as a community, we need to provide platforms for positive people to come forward and to really lead with this change for young people to kind of follow in that sense. And I think the other solutions that I know, the other solutions that I have are to make sure that we have the funding for these things as a community. Mm-hmm. You know, we have youth clubs that are unused. I'm from Enfield. There's if I told you what the situation was up there, you know, it's a problem. We need to really try and counteract these things and not necessarily rely on the council to do these things, but to empower us as youth organisations and volunteer organisations to use these spaces for social enterprise. Why do we need to keep going for funding when we have all these empty buildings we can use? That doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. So, I mean, I would also say, so it's not even appreciate it, but the last thing I wanted to say is, as I mentioned, I got stabbed, and for me, I think one of the things that young people really engage with well is media. So I've created a film. It's a short film. We're going to take it into schools from November. And essentially for me, it also features my brother, Robin Travis, over there as well. He's written an amazing book called Prisoner to the Streets and Mama Can't Raise No Man. And we come from 2 different ends of the spectrum. I started school playing the violin. I got into a grammar school and I got stabbed. I got kicked out. I went and I did country lines. I sold Class A drugs at the age of 16. So it can happen to anybody. Mm-hmm. It can happen from the boy from the council estate. It can happen to the boy whose mum and dad, you know, did everything in their power to make it happen. And we need to give both sides of the spectrum an opportunity to talk and give them platforms to represent themselves properly. So I feel like, you know, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I think, as a few people have said, you guys have been doing it for a long time, but it's now down to us to do some stuff as well. And we need to be empowered with the spaces that you have to be able to do what we need to do, because we've been saying this for 10 years, as my brother said. We've been saying this, and I don't think that the answer is going to come from the people in this room, as you said. It's going to come from the people doing the work. So just to empower us to do the work, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Hamida Ali. I'm the lead cabinet member for Community Safety in Croydon. And I just wanted to highlight a piece of work that we are doing there, which our local Children's Safeguarding Board has commissioned. And it speaks very much to the findings that you've found and what our speakers have already said. They took a thematic approach to commissioning 60 cases, looking at 60 cases, so a thematic serious case review, to try and understand how our response to vulnerable adolescents could be improved, to see if there's something that we could learn about the common characteristics to those young people, some of whom have very sadly lost their lives and some of whom are still with us. In all those cases, those young people were already known to the local authority, and in some instances before they were born, their mothers were known to us. In every single one of those 60 cases, not one of those young people had a permanent place in school. We're very familiar with the conversation around exclusions, and Courtney, who I thought was talking very interestingly about the impact of restorative justice. I'll be taking that back to Croydon. Courtney was also talking about paternal absence. What we found, and these are interim findings at the moment, that maternal absence is also a very important feature. And again, that concept of emotional absence and not just physical absence. Massive unaddressed mental health needs, but also in speaking to the conversation already about role models, not one of those young people had, as the jargon goes, a relationship with a trusted adult. So forget a parent, not a grandparent, not an uncle or aunt, not a neighbour, not a mentor, not a family friend. And I think that's very powerful in terms of what Margaret Mizzen was talking about in terms of love and attention for our young people. So I just wanted to highlight that that's one approach that a Children's Safeguarding Board is doing, and we'll be using those findings to inform our response.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Dwayne Vincent to speak, if that's all right. I know you have to leave it before we finish today.
Hi, Steve O'Connell. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me. Most would know me. Can you hear me? Yeah. Most would know me as Mega from So Solid, founder of So Solid Crew, founder of many other ventures, clothing lines and stuff like that. Well, it's been 25 years since I felt I've been an adult in the UK, when I had my first child in 1995. And there's a few issues. I've grown up in a culture where we do grow our kids as adults at an early age, teenagers and stuff like that. And when we actually do leave the house, it's like we forget the initial reason why we left our doorstep and thought we can enter the real world without our parents and without mentoring from our home. And a few of those things happened when we actually hit the real world. We felt that we were enemies of society, or we felt that we were enemies of the authorities. And the communication barrier has actually left. When I was in primary school, we had police discos, we had a better communication with our authorities in our area, and that has seemed to be lost. Like the young brother said, there's empty community halls. And when I was growing up, all of those places got locked down for whatever reason it was. And to me, I think it just fell behind in moving with the times. So if we do have empty buildings in our areas, we do need them to be filled with staff and with people who are qualified to actually entertain the youth with technology and things that they are more interested in doing, more than just the physicality of sports or running or football and so forth. I've been around many environments, and to me, I feel that our culture is doing very well. Apart from what we're here today and the rise of knife crime, which is similar to the statistics in 2010, I would say our culture is doing well. A lot of people are being successful. A lot of people are stepping into the business world, Asian, black communities. So we're doing quite well, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done, and the mayor and the authorities need to follow us, our communities, all the way to the end, and not treat our youngsters as enemies and treat them as, you know, British citizens, and take care of their well-being. So there's many factors. I ain't gonna go on for too long, but I'm sure there's other discussions that I would like to have with individuals on a personal basis to see if we can move forward. But I'm here to show my support, and I'm very pleased with the progress of our community over the years. It's been a long time coming, and we're almost there, but we just need a little bit more support from the government and our leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go back a little bit at the end there, if that's okay, and then over to Mark.
Let me stand, sir. Can you hear me? I might need to tilt it a bit. There's a saying, I'm going to start because we're kind of struck for time. It's called, in the Bible it says, he who has, help me out, Amani, is, let him hear, and he who has sight, let him see. I've been here before, guys, and been doing this work for over 10 years. And we've been asked the question today to break down 3 things, which is solution, police effort, and what's the other one?
City Hall.
What can we do?
Root causes.
What can we do as the mayor? Well, we've explained it. He who has ears, let him hear, and he who has sight, let him see. I did a documentary prior to this event today. I wasn't coming to talk because I met Sadiq Khan the other day, been in the room with him. I'm not sure if this lady was here, but we had a meeting. We've been talking for years. This book is called Prisoner to the Street. It's not about me promoting a book. It's about me promoting your questions, giving you a solution, giving you the explanations, and giving you the answers and exit strategies to a mindset. Now imagine you're playing football, and everyone's shooting, and that's the goal. And you guys all think you're scoring. You're all saying clever things. We've got gang issues, we've got knife crime, we've got gun crime. You don't all think you're scoring goals. You're even actually recruiting people, ex-gang members, to come and work alongside with the police to make a difference to our communities. And you're actually thinking you're doing good work. Or you know you're not doing good work, and you're pretending. Now, I don't know which one it is. And a lot of people on the streets, we don't know whether you genuinely care or you don't. Now, me, I'm not going to stand up here and pretend that you guys are listening, taking in anything I'm saying. I'm standing here as the author of 2 books, which talks about parenting. Mama Can't Raise No Man. Talks about the lack of an absent father. It gives you a story, it gives you a solution, it gives you the problems, and it tells you what we need in case you don't have that parent, but you look past me. Prisoner to the Street, let's go back to the first book. Who in this room can say that they've been stabbed and stabbed? Who in this room can say that they've been shot and shot? People. Who in this room can say that there was the beginning of a war which started in Hackney, Holly Street versus London Fields, and that they're responsible for it? I am. I still live in London Fields. I didn't write a book and go to South London or any other area because I'm still in the same area, getting the same respect for being the same person I used to be. Now, I said you're shooting at the wrong goal. Gang issues. We don't have gang issues. Stop running with this narrative. I've been saying it for years. Funny enough, I wrote this book 6 years ago. Now I'm hearing people who had organizations about gangs. They get more exposure than me, and they'll stand up and say, we don't have a gang issue. I wonder where they got that from. Prison to the Street's a mindset. I've explained it. We don't have a gun issue. Gun crime, knife crime. We have a mindset. It starts from about 5 years old. When you're on the state, like I said in the first few pages, and you get hit, and your mum says, if anyone hits you, hit them back. Learned behaviors, emotional immaturity, goes on to teenage stages. You hear a lot of these rappers, even in their 30s, talking out their backside, because they haven't emotionally developed to be talking the way that people like Tupac and who were still young in that mindset. But my whole purpose is this. This book, a young man read it who killed Kwamari Barnes. Who's heard about that in this room? Can I get a raise of hand if anybody's heard that? 1, 2, 3. The guy who killed Kwamari Barnes read this book and he said to the judge, I confess for my crimes while I was on remand. I read this book and he turned to the parents in court and said, I'm sorry for killing your son. Mr. Paul Kwamari's dad, a guy called Paul, I'm sorry for killing your son. Had I had read this book before, we wouldn't be in a situation. I wouldn't have killed your son. Now, this isn't Dragon's Den. I ain't trying to sell you lot nothing. Yeah? I'm not trying to talk wise to get you lot to get behind, but this book was on a curriculum, and a young lady from a school here called Jess Hope put that book into curriculum Key Stage 3, Year 9. They did it as part of their GCSEs. They learned a hell of a lot. We did a short video. I was told that video was going to be showed. The second I got here and told that video was not going to be showed, I was about to go home because I said, what am I here for? You're not seeing the quality of my work. Now, what is the solution? Okay, we can't explain prison to the streets in this period of time. It's a 4-hour workshop, so we can't do this now. I'm about to get cut off. But the point I'm gonna, and it's disrespectful to get cut off, and it's disrespectful to get rushed, when I can bring people I've stabbed right now, put my arm around them, and people who have stabbed me. How much of you in this room can do that? How much of you that have walked it, talked it, and made peace? Can I get a raise of hands? So if this was Dragon's Den, you should be investing in it, is what I'm saying. Because I have the same solution you're talking about. And it's not coming from just my mouth. It's coming from the mouth of the people. It's not arrogance. It's frustration. We've been here before. I was in the room with Sadiq Khan just 2 months ago. He bought my book. We spoke. Talk is cheap. Get the workshops in the schools. Invest. What's the solution? Okay, it's not me going to a school, doing a talk, getting a round of applause. What is my strategy? It's simple. Let me tour the whole country. Because when my mum was young, she said, if anybody hits you, hit them back. So she was disciplining me, but she weren't able to discipline your children who was hitting me. So there's no point in me going to one school and educating one child. Let us get into the schools on a consistent basis. Scrap Black History Month. Let's put in prison to the street months. Allow me to train young people like my brother Amani, all these guys who are passionate, who understand it's not a gang issue we face, it's not a knife issue, because guns don't kill people, people kill people. And if you keep talking about gun crime, what are we going to call it next? We've got acid crime. It's a mindset. It's not the weapon. People want to cure the pain and not the addiction. Guys, I'm fed up of saying things that sound smart to get you lot to believe in the work I'm doing, and I could carry on. All I'm going to say is please invest in what we're doing, workshops, get this book on the curriculum, as the young children said, on the DVD, which is not being shown today, and let's do work. I'm ready. Are you ready?
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will watch your film, we promise. And thank you for that. That was really great. Mark at the back, I think you had your hand up.
I'm Mark Blake. I'm a councillor in Haringey and lead member for community safety for the borough since May. Just a few points I want to raise. We submitted a piece of research which we commissioned from the Godwin Lawson Foundation's local charity, Yvonne Lawson, who lost her son in Tottenham in 2010. And Yvonne and a team of researchers went out and spoke to young people in Tottenham. And I think in terms of the themes that they fed back, they want opportunities, they want places to go, safe places to go. They want their schools to operate in a different way. You know, we've spoken about the issue of exclusions, we've spoken about how children get labelled, the poor response to those with special educational needs. They specifically spoke about racism in the school system and in the police. There was a lot of scorn for social workers as well. And I just want a couple of comments in terms of my observations over the last 4 months in the job. Firstly, children. As a borough, we're going through what we call our borough plan, which is the corporate plan for the council, for the new administration. We've agreed that preventing the criminalisation of children will be a corporate objective, Haringey Council. And that is going to mean a real challenge for us as a local authority, but also for the police, for schools. The Youth Offending Service in Haringey is now seeing fewer young people. They've got less resources. Those kids have got more complex needs. But what's more worrying, if you think about it in two concentric rings, if you look at the kids who actually access the YOS service, yeah, and then you look at that outer ring of kids who are at risk, all the services, the youth services, the earlier interventions, they have been absolutely decimated. In Haringey, in 2009-10, we had a youth service budget of about 3 million. I'm dealing with a budget of under 400,000. And I'm talking to people every week who I know can make a difference, like people speaking here now. We don't have the resources, right? We don't have the resources. We've got a pittance to deal with this issue. And my last point is, no, two more points. My penultimate point is around drug dealing. Drug dealing is now pervasive in London. This isn't, I have to work with Met colleagues in Haringey, so I'm not criticising them, but we had a members' briefing with our borough commander on Monday. Drug dealing from the prosperous west of our borough, right across the borough, our council estates, our high streets, is all pervasive. The kind of operations the Met need to do to tackle this from an enforcement respect are very intensive, cost a great deal of money, the resources are not there. And the worry I have is that the drug dealing culture, anyone who's ever watched The Wire, when that becomes embedded in communities, right? When the people you look around you, on, you know, in your block of flats, right, the kids you went to school with, right, if your role models, right, are in that lifestyle, if on social media you're getting pumped that lifestyle, right, I think it's a very, very worrying trend. And my last point, which I raised with Sean at a meeting in Hackney, is around mediation services. You know, Chicago, New York, the services that have been developed in terms of public health approach are around guys like a lot of the people who've spoken here today, actually supporting them, employing them, funding them to go out and to mediate in terms of potentially violent situations. That's at the centre of what happened in Chicago. That's at the centre of what's gone on in New York. We need to fund that. Shouldn't be funded through the Met. The Met are currently, I think, getting about $400K a year for a mediation company that they set up. The Met should not be doing that. The money should be coming to local authorities, and we should then be funding guys like these guys in this room to do that work on the ground. Thank you.
Chair, do we have time for one or two?
Yeah, two more.
Two more, brilliant. So the young man at the front, sorry. No, this young man at the front here, with the white shirt, and then the man at the back there. Sorry.
Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Yufeko. I've been to prison 7 times, and I just came out 2016. And now I'm an entrepreneur and I run a big chauffeuring company and a concierge company. The reason why I gave you that kind of introduction is because I'm attached to a church called SPAC Nation. I'm sure you probably all heard about it because we make a lot of noise on social media. And out of SPAC Nation, when I came out of jail, these were a bunch of people that just looked like me. Do you understand? By me saying they looked like me is that they could relate. There were people in that place that could relate to everything that I had been through. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And the person that was talking to me wasn't just somebody that was trying to know about what's happening with my life. The person that I would actually talk to had some kind of experience in what I had been through myself. Now, coming from 2016, I currently run the biggest community unit group in East London right now. I know I've heard a lot of people speak, but currently I'm the person that has all the young people coming into my community unit right at this moment of time. And in the last 5 months that we've been running, we've raised 100K, and we've gave it back into the people that we are trying to help. And that's just the community unit that I'm talking about. The church as a whole has raised over $1 million by itself and gave it back into the community. And every single month or every 2 months, we put up the accounts, everything that we received and how much we give back into the community. That's without any help. Do you understand? And like I said, I'm not here to boast. We're here to change lives. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And it starts from when you're in your house, you get an education. And when you leave your house, you also get an education. So we could all be in this room right now thinking about what to do and how to help. But as we are all in this room right now, there's a bunch of young kids outside or youths outside that are getting a different kind of education as well to even harden the kind of result that we are trying to perceive today. What I'm saying is that everyone wants to work together without working together. Do you understand? There's so much different things that everyone wants to do. But if we all had one voice, do you understand what I'm saying to you? If we all actually partnered up and we backed one voice and we backed something that is actually working, do you understand what I'm saying to you? Then we would reduce everything that we are trying to reduce, we will reduce it dramatically. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Now, I'm talking about in 5 months, we've had over 500 people coming to Eastside. Do you understand? over 500 people. That's the community. And I've got some of my mentees, my mentees that I mentor that are here today. I've got some of them here. Now, what it's not talk, what we do is practical. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? It's practical. Now, we can sit here and talk for 2 hours, like you said, Chairman. We can talk here for 2 hours, but that's just talking. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And the youth have they've clocked, if I may say clocked, I know some of you might not understand what I'm trying to say, but if I can say that, the youth now have clocked that when we come to places like this, all we're going to do is talk. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And they've realized this. If we sit in a room, we're just going to talk. Do you understand? Now, if we can actually get a result and we can speak about something and we can get a timeline of, you know what, we've spoke about this and listen, this is what we're going to do, and we actually do it, then what you will do is you will now win the trust of the young people. Because at the moment, the reason why we can't change anything is because they don't trust us. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? The reason why they trust me is because I've been there. The reason why they can trust him or him because we've been there. Do you understand? The last point I'm going to make is this. You have the keys. We're not telling you to do it by yourselves. What we're trying to say to you is this. Give us the key and you be behind us and you will say the change.
That was really great, and we will be making recommendations to the Mayor for action and getting involved. It's really important, that's part of our job. Just one final brief word from someone, the gentleman at the back there.
Okay. Hello, my name's Dave Walker. I'm a community mediator and a resident of London all my life. Just wanted to touch on that point that my brother said over there in terms of community mediation centres. We not only train young people in schools to mediate, we take those teenagers out in school into the community to mediate as well. They are the role models out there. Equally, as the point was made over there about families that are fractured, I also do work with separated parents, because it's not just the fact that the parents are absent, it's the war that they're witnessing between the two parents. It's the parents fighting for contact or residence that they'll see what children hear, what children see, children do. So it's also about working with those parents so they can actually calm that. It's not just about contact, it's the quality of that contact, it's the conflict that they've witnessed. When we had 40 to 50 youths in the north of our borough in Southwark that were causing ASB, when you asked them what they wanted somewhere to sit. It was about opening up the youth club. You opened up the youth club for one day, the crime rate dropped. And I'll tell you what, let's talk about pound notes. Forget community, forget love. Think about money. How much money does it cost to solve one, when you've got to deal with one murder? When I was a gangs mediator, 1.2 million it was to deal with one murder. And that's if you find the person that committed it within a week. That's how much it costs. How many murders we had? It doesn't even make financial sense. It's stupidity, what we're doing. If you want to think about money, invest in those community mediation centres, invest in those schools, invest in the young people. They are the role models. It doesn't make financial sense at all. And it's, as Margaret touched, it's not just about that one murder, it's the ripple effect that affects our communities and do that. Please back your community mediators, your peacemakers. The young people can do it. Get your money into those youth clubs, get them open, get them skilled up. You've heard the answers today. Let's rock on now and do it, please.
Thank you.
And thank you for that. Answering that point around actions. You're here, and many of you are representing a lot of people and doing a lot of good work, and you're coming here with ideas that we want to turn into recommendations, that we want to then turn into solutions from this building. So you can go back to, hopefully, the people you represent to say that there was a purpose in this, and it's to be helpful. We've heard some very positive things that we will pick up on, and too many now to talk about, but we've captured them, and I'm grateful for that. So we're now going to move into the next section, which is around the police, and welcome today to them, and relationships with the community. And I think that will be Florence, you're leading on that.
Yeah,
please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the contributions already. This section, we're looking at what the relationship with the police look like. And I think about my own experience with the police as someone who grown up in Brixton, in the heart of Brixton and Summer Leighton, and some of the interactions I've seen with the police and some of our young people, some of them not always good. Within seconds, an incident with the police escalating And that's just because of body language and the way the police were speaking and engaging with these young people. Something could have been addressed, something could have been dealt with quicker. But equally, when there's an issue, when there's a problem, the police are the first people we call. So why is it that with some communities there is still a mismatch in terms of their relationship and their trust? Mega touched on the fact of the trust with the police. But back in these days, actually they used to interact with the police a lot more. There's been a lot said around the fact that the Met need to do a lot more in terms of engaging with certain communities, and maybe we need to encourage our young BME men and women to actually join the police so that the police look and feel and sound like Londoners. But the reality is the police have a difficult job in terms of going into areas which they may not be familiar with. It has to be a joint effort with the police and the communities, because time and again people have said that the police can't solve this on their own. We know that the answers lie within those communities. So how can we work with the police to address and reduce this violent crime? What role can the police play in this? And is it just about putting more money in initiatives like the Violent Crime Task Force, which has now received a funding of 15 million from the Mayor? Or do we want to go back to that good old-fashioned community policing where actually the police officer knew the names of the young boys and girls? When we used to run around Brixton Market, all those police officers knew us by first names. We need to see some of that back in our community so that we can build that trust. I want to introduce Thaddeus Brown, who's a part of the Hackney Young Inspirational Group Leaders, and he's going to talk about some of the things they've been doing in Hackney and the Young Black Men Partnership. Do we have a mic, please?
So yeah, my name is Thaddeus Brown. I am currently a design apprentice at Hackney Council, so that's how I got involved in the Hackney CVS and the Young Black Men's program that the Hackney Council is pioneering. It's the first council to have actually a program dedicated to young black men. And so my journey started with HCVS by me interviewing the youth leadership manager, Deji, and then he got me onto a bunch of workshops and events that we're doing, which some of them are police training, some of them are stop and search meetings that we have with the police. But in terms of what a better relationship looks like with the police, I want to kind of give you a visual. So the other day, I saw a staff kind of headline that there would be a bike mechanic at Mabley Green on Saturday. I didn't know what else was happening. I didn't know the context of why there was a bike mechanic at Mabley Green, but I wanted my bike fixed for free, so I went down on the Saturday. When I got there, it was a whole event. There was actually a boxing kind of sparring thing happening. There was actually like professional, amateur turning professional boxer that was from the area that I had come down to kind of help the kids out and stuff like that. And when we first got there, we just thought, okay, this is like a fair. It's like loads of kids around. You can see it's obviously a community event. So first thing me and my friend did was try and find a bike mechanic because that's what we wanted to do, get our bikes fixed. So as we went over, we were approached by police, so the police that were at the event. It already sounds like a negative story, doesn't it? Which is quite crazy, but it was actually like it was a positive story. So our first interaction started off positively. They offered us meal tickets to then get food for free at the food stand. So something so simple, I thought, wow, okay. That I already was kind of anticipating like a negative interaction the first time around. I was probably expecting them to ask me like, are you guys okay? This is community event, whatever, to kind of, I don't know, try and mediate a problem that maybe didn't exist. That was my kind of anticipation. But what I saw was that they were there to actually serve the community. And you actually forget that sometimes, that the police actually there to serve the community. I had to kind of look back in hindsight to my experience in my childhood, because I'm 21 years old. So being a young kid growing up, I don't ever remember having a positive image of the police. I didn't ever remember seeing police in my community doing positive things. So that event alone, there were kids at the event, so I was thinking, what is this doing for the kids at the event? It's giving them a good first positive, maybe not first, but a good positive interaction with the police. You're getting to understand that they're there to actually serve and protect, not just enforce. So that was really cool. That was a visual I just wanted to give you guys. That's what a better relationship with the police looks like. Because I can tell you, I don't remember seeing that when I was a kid and growing up. So it's good that that's happening now, and we need more of that. In terms of what HCVS is doing and what we're doing in Hackney, like I said, we're doing the stop and search meetings. We're doing police. We're going to meet. We're meeting police officers at the police station, and we're kind of talking to them about, or essentially educating, well, kind of cultural competence, like Courtney mentioned before. So those are the types of things we were doing. But yeah, I believe that this is all good work, and this is all kind of bringing us to a better relationship. But the ultimate thing I need, so what we're tackling there quickly is we're tackling the negative perception of the police within the community. That does need to happen within the police of the community as well. So they need to, by engaging in these events, that will happen anyway. So that's kind of why I use that visual, because it serves a mutual purpose. Community are seeing the police as people that are just serving and protecting and keeping the peace. And the police are seeing the community no animosity, that they're seeing that how we engage and interact with one another, which is high energy. We might be loud, but this is how we interact with each other. When I say we, I mean particularly the black community that exists within these areas that youth crime and youth violence are quite prominent. And that's just working class communities in general. So going on from that, I believe that all of this work can be done and it's good, but ultimately we need accountability in terms of the community's perception on the police. We need accountability. The situation at the Rashawn Charles incident, I know that has been resolved recently. It's come out to say that the police officer hasn't been charged. Nothing's kind of happened, and it was justice, I guess, or it was fine. That does not do much for the trust and the confidence of the community in the police. That actually destroys a lot of the work that had been built up in, just building that foundation of trust. It absolutely destroys it. So if we continue to have incidents like this and there isn't any police accountability whatsoever, then we're basically just doing this work for nothing, is what I'm saying. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. So a range of areas, and I think a key question coming out from that, and it's something that we on this committee do: who's policing the police? So it is right that, you know, police officers are held to account for their actions if there is a wrongdoing. I think the rollout of and introduction of things like body-worn cameras, something that a number of us have campaigned for, is long overdue, and it's something that's welcomed. I think it's about making sure that people, not just young people necessarily, but people know their rights when they're being arrested in terms of how far an officer can go. I think if there are incidents like Section 60 is implemented, people know that's happening. But it's about looking at the wider role of the police as well in terms of what they can do in terms of helping us. Because I think the police are crucial. We've got to remember that a number of these police officers, they were young as well. Some of them did grow up in the area, so they have an important role to play. I just wanted to get some thoughts on, maybe we can hear from former police officers as well, on some, and we've got a few in the audience, on what role that we think that the police can play in helping us to address this issue. We got the microphone.
Excuse me. Yes, I'm Leroy Logan, 30-year veteran police officer. And primarily, since leaving the Met in 2013, I'm working with the voluntary sector. And I've been doing that since 2001, when we set up a youth leadership program. And one of the things that leadership program, which is now BTEC level 2, so they actually get UCAS points, at year 9, which the Mayor, Boris Johnson, used to fund, but these things move on, so we get our own funding. But the key issue that those young people say on a day-to-day basis during that 100-hour program we do is they feel over-policed and underprotected. Now, that is a theme they've said for the last 17 years, since 2001. And we've been feeding that back into the Met. But a lot of it is around the leadership of that borough. And in particular, the supervision of the officers. Now, we know violence has peaked and troughed over the years, but at least, say, 10 years ago, we had the supervision more hands-on. Supervision now is very at arm's length. You don't see a sergeant patrolling with an officer just to see how they interact during that critical encounter. And as a result of that, you are seeing that officers, most of them are good, but there are those who don't understand their impact in that critical encounter. And so that one bad encounter can roll back trust and confidence. Whereas if it's dealt with respect and dignity, that builds trust and confidence, and that builds intelligence. And that, for me, is one of the keys to good policing. The cultural intelligence, the cultural competence is key to know how to work with your communities. But what is another issue is the lack of capacity in policing. At the moment, it's firefighting policing we're seeing. And they're just reacting to events. There's no proactivity. So as a result of that, you're not getting the partnerships with the community, the voluntary sector, in particular with young people, not recognizing the adverse childhood experiences they're going through. And so the narrative is you try and scare them into submission, drop the knife or the gun, or whatever you're doing, instead of caring for them and recognizing the trauma they're going through. So until we get that mindset shift, a paradigm shift in how policing is conducted on a day-to-day basis and how it can have an impact on long-term interventions and preventions. And I'll end by this. About 5 years ago, the clear-up rate for murders was over 90%. That is now halved. Now you could say, to some extent, it might be down to the less officers. Remember, we're 700 detectives down in the Met alone, and we're under 30,000 for the first time in 15 years. But you have to then say, where is the wall of silence? Where is the barriers? They're not getting information. Some of it's through fear, some of it's through not really appreciating the impact police have on them. But more importantly, it's because people are thinking, well, if someone is, if the clear-up rate is half, so that person has got a 50-50 chance of getting away with it. So you've got a really negative cycle that policing really needs to understand. And I, unfortunately, feel that a lot of my colleagues are in denial. They're not really understanding the scale of it. It's not just about police numbers. It's around not working with the communities that we serve in a sustainable way that they believe appeal in principle, the police are the community and the community of the police.
We've also got a member from the GLA peer outreach team who's got some thoughts. Is it Georgina? Do you want to share your thoughts with us? Then we'll come back to some more comments.
Hi, my name is Georgina. I would just like to quickly mention that I used to go to Cardinal Pole School. I don't know if you recognise me. So hi. And while I was at Cardinal Pole School, I used to be a part of a lot of initiatives that were run by the council and various charities in the local area in Hackney. And one of those charities was an organisation called the Youth Independent Advisory Group for Wick Ward. So this was an advisory group that was a youth section for an independent advisory group that had already existed, that where the people of Wick Ward could come together and advise the police on how they should be going forward. And we had a youth fraction where we would meet with the police and we would sample some of the initiatives that they were thinking of rolling out to schools and local youth communities. And for example, I remember when they brought out a stack of cards that they intended to use as a game in order to make young people more familiar with the police, their role and their rights, in an attempt to bridge the gap between our community in Hackney and the police. And unfortunately, services like the Youth Independent Advisory Group were shut down for reasons because of lack of funding. And of course, I was in school during the financial crisis in 2008. So a lot of the youth groups that I did attend after school were also shut down. People who did used to go to the Youth Independent Advisory Group were people who teachers recognized as they could either go down one route, which would not be particularly good for them, or another route. And I remember a boy who used to go to the Youth Independent Advisory Group, who used to work with the police, and now, after it was subsequently shut down, actually went to the other route. And I'm just here to say that, like others have been saying, just building that relationship with the police, allowing young people to become comfortable, allowing for attitudes to change around the police and the community, and allowing for these relationships to develop is actually vitally important. And it's very sad to see that we are losing people to the streets because we are not able to build that relationship between young people and the police. Thank you.
Thank you. Get some more comment. Got Margaret in the front and then two young people at the back there, and Alistair.
Thank you, Florence, for allowing me to talk again. And I love what you were saying about going back in time, really, because to have the Bobby on the beat, if you like, getting to know the community is definitely what we need. However, I want to take you back to when Jimmy was killed. I'm the mother of 9 children. My role in life was to be a mum. I had never had anything to do with the police until my son was killed. And the day that he was killed, the police came round, and I was very apprehensive. I was really frightened. You know, they're coming into my house, and we were going to be given a family liaison officer. Again, I don't want this person in my house. But actually, what I found was these police officers were absolutely amazing. And the family liaison officer was a young woman of 30 who actually came into her house, and we could phone her at any time, this very, very young woman. I think what we have is we've learned not to trust the police, but actually we know that the majority of the police work incredibly hard, and we must recognise that as well. And I feel they do a lot more work than we all know, because I know when Jimmy was killed, they worked 24 hours a day, and they did so much work underneath that nobody knew about. We must recognise that. And in what is going on in society, we have to let the police do their work. We are criticising them all the time. While they're out there trying to find the perpetrators of these crimes, please, please let the police do their work. We know there are some that are actually not so good, but the majority are. And also, I think what we do in our charity, we have safety conferences. So twice a year, we have these safety conferences. We bring about 6 schools within the Lewisham Borough together with community officers, like the police, people from our local authority, and we get the young people to talk to the police, to talk to people from the local authority, to question them, and to build that relationship. We need to build relationships. And I'm going to touch on stop and search. It might be something that you all disapprove of, but I have to speak about it because I've always disapproved of stop and search. However, at this moment of time, with what is going on in London, we have to have it in the short term, not the long term. But because if you talk to the mother who's just lost a son or a daughter, and they say that if they'd had stop and search, my child's life would have been saved. How would you feel to that? So I think let's also praise the police because they do a fantastic job. And for those that are not working so hard, they're the ones we need to watch. So thank you.
No, thank you.
We've got the GLA peer outreach group. They're bursting to speak. They're talking back. Do you want to indicate, guys, and make sure you don't miss out? There you go, Flo.
Hi, my name is Muila from the peer outreach team. Okay, cool.
Just do one at a time, eh?
Yeah, I'm Kismet from the peer outreach team.
And I'm Lamar.
Sorry, can you say it again? So I'm deaf.
Lamar.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're from the peer outreach team, and we're all different ages, from 15 to 25, from different backgrounds and different walks of life.
Basically what we do is we work for the GLA and we advocate for young people, and we've done a lot of work with serious youth violence. We've done a lot of work with the mayor. We also worked we worked on his knife crime summit, so we sat on the panel discussing the findings that we found working with a range of young people from PRUs and youth offending teams, and we found that there was a range of issues that young people obviously face with the police, one being trust, a lot of the things have been sort of raised. So one thing that we wanted to sort of round up is that if you actually empower young people, then we can actually know our rights, we can stand up, we can hold, we can sort of come up, like if we're being stopped, we can come up with the solutions better, but if we also are being stopped at that moment by the police, we will be able to handle situations better as opposed to getting yourself in more mess. Also, the whole thing about support, what we do is we do a lot of outreach work with these young people and youth offending teams, so then they can actually understand that there's different routes out of situations like, you know, employability and crime and all the issues that have come up today.
Yeah, no, and a lot of the things that Kes has mentioned with the young people that we've done work with, we found is really important, because not only, as Lamar has said, that we find it important that young people should be from all different spectrums who have been experiencing these, who have experienced what we're talking about today, but people on our team have also experienced and lived through what we're talking about today. So that's why we find it very important. We also have done a lot of work around, with some roadshows and PRUs as well, understanding what young people require and want, and we found some lots of research in young people talking about trusted relationships and having that trusted relationships with an adult.
And also that obviously the community should also play a part, not just the police, that faith leaders should also play a big role, and that also, that like yourself mentioned about the police being, that there are some bad police. It's about police understanding that you do get racial profiling. So obviously that things need to be, they need to hold accountability, like that was mentioned earlier as well. Yeah, that's it.
Before we go into Alistair, can we just get the young boy at the back, and then we'll come to Alistair, and then we'll come to this side. Thank you.
Islam from the Youth Independent Advisory Group in Waltham Forest. We've been set up since 2008, and we've been working really closely with other boroughs such as Newham and Tower Hamlets to actually set up the Youth Independent Advisory Group. And we've actually helped Southwark Young Advisors, which are a national network, a national charity, to set up their own Youth Independent Advisory Group. And what we do is we work very closely with young people and the police to enhance community safety. So we do a lot of work with the Youth Offending Service. We go out into schools, deliver assemblies, workshops. And I think the most interesting thing that we found, being a part of the Youth Independent Advisory Group, is that via training new police recruits, they've come to understand how intimidating it is to be stopped and searched as a young person, especially when you do not know your rights. You feel sort of threatened by an individual who is more knowledgeable than you are. So one of the things that we teach is an acronym called SEARCH. So staying calm, S. E, eye contact, making sure that you're engaging with eye contact with the police officers that are stopping you. A, asking questions. Officer, is this a stop and search or a stop and account? Do I have to give my personal details? R, receipt. gaining a receipt from the stop and search so you can take it forward if you feel like you have been stopped on without enough evidence. Record. Officer, can I record this conversation for my own proof, for my own safety? C, confidence, making sure that you're treating it as sort of a conversation rather than sort of confrontation. And H, making sure that you're holding the stop and search to account. So whether you feel like you're, as a young person, whether you feel like you're being stopped and searched without sort of justifiable basis, without a justifiable basis, you cannot actually take it forward. And I think that one of the things that we try to bring forward as the YIAG is that as much as we, as young people, all sat here, love to do the work that we do, we don't have enough resources and tools to go out there on a national scale and actually help these young people who need our help. And the thing is, you guys, I know that you guys are looking for the answers. We have the answers. We need your support to actually go out there and sort of be the voice of young people. A lot of the young people out there need our help. It's about finding them and providing them with the resources that we have that are already there and have worked time and time again. They are successful. There's a lot of people that we work that are in the Youth Independent Advisory Group that are former criminal justice system members, so they have been through the criminal justice system. And when we go out there to schools and we actually they tell their speech and tell their story of how they have been stabbed or they have sort of sold drugs or whatever they have done that's been illegitimate, it's sort of pin drop silence, because when it's from young person to young person, peer to peer, it's what really gets them. It doesn't make sense for an adult who's not been through the criminal justice system to talk about it and talk about what the solution is. It's about providing young people with a platform to speak and actually go out there and change the UK and change the world.
Thank you.
Chair, thank you, Flo. I'm Alistair Reid. I'm a retired Met Police officer and swinging the lantern a little bit, I was runner-up Community Constable of the Year in 1997.
Well done.
I want to look forward. This is about relationships between communities and police. Relationships are a two-way street. Communities have a responsibility, and it is only right and proper that community responsibilities are identified, promulgated, and supported. The flip side of that is that dedicated ward officers must be ring-fenced and selected appropriately, not just put in place. They need to be the best cops possible on the streets to do the most wonderful work, engaging with communities. The final point I want to make, engagement is not measured. What don't get measured, don't get done. Let's have a strategic directive that engagement is measured and that DWOs are fully ring-fenced and not just used as some operational pawn on the board. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Darius Hemmetport. I'm currently a superintendent in the Metropolitan Police Force and I work on the Violent Crime Task Force. Really just a couple of points I would like to say really. I think firstly about the work that we do, which obviously is quite an enforcement aspect in terms of policing. And obviously that has its place, you know, post any event where sadly somebody's been assaulted, the subject of any type of violence, whether that's a homicide or you know, perhaps somebody's been stabbed, shot, or you know, subject to domestic abuse. There requires, of course, an intervention. There requires a proactive response to investigate that crime and actually to try and prevent further incidents from happening, whether that's because of community tensions, but actually using our tactics, whether that's stop and search, which I appreciate is a very divisive tactic, but it could be things as working with the community around weapons sweeps, and anything at our disposal really to try and reduce the amount of weapons that are out on the streets in London as well. But I think really critical to a lot of this is engagement, and of course we've heard today from many people in the audience, it's absolutely critical that we, the police, are seen as part of that community, and we can only do that by working with people in the room here, by actually having some of the shackles around performance measures taking off, and I think we are seeing a change in that tide, that we're kind of moving away from perhaps performance measures and working far more holistically with our colleagues, but again, that also includes colleagues in other organisations and agencies in the public sector, where it's absolutely vital that whilst we're all subject to austerity, we come together for a common purpose and actually realign our priorities and make sure that we all have the same objectives, which doesn't always happen, and I think that could be a key issue. And I guess the final point I would say, and it does kind of relate to some of our powers around stop and search, but also other powers that we use to search people, post and arrest, for example. Since the last 18 months, we have seized 4,200 weapons from the streets or from people in London. Now, I can't quantify my next comment, but it begs the question: how much violence could that have caused? Could that have prevented homicides, further acts of violence? Who knows? But 4,200 weapons is a significant amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Just mindful of time, just got time for one more. Gentleman at the front there's been indicating for a while.
My name is Michael Stevens. I'm a sergeant within the Metropolitan Police, and my actual role is running a project called #Together at the moment. I work on the central engagement team, and my job at the moment is to work with the superintendents of each BCU around London to empower the communities to come to us with your ideas and solutions to work with us at the moment. My colleague here spoke about the community event days that he went to when he was younger. That's actually what I put on at the moment. My job is to plan the community event days, to go to the local safer neighbourhood teams, the DWOs that you mentioned, to actually get everyone to put together a community event day so people get the positive interaction. They include our territorial support group who do the convoy stuff for the Violent Crime Task Force. They go out, they talk to the community, tell them why they go out and do the stop and searches, what powers they have. They welcome the feedback from these days, and then I take the best practice from them and put them into other events. So far we've done 5 or 6 across London so far. First one started off in Enfield, and they're beginning to grow, but I need people to come to us as well, and the local officers who then feed back into me. What the gentleman said there in relation to actually monitoring engagement, and the commander holds a weekly conference call with all his superintendents around the engagement that's gone on. I actually collate all of those returns into one document briefing for him, so he knows about the engagement that's going on the boroughs. That then goes back to the commissioner. So any projects, anybody that's in this room or knows of anybody else outside this room, go to your local police teams, feed it into us, it comes into me, and then I will happily put on these community days. So we get all of our blue light partners, fire brigade, ambulance service, all the schools, community, local authorities, but we need the volunteer groups as well. Everyone's mentioned funding and everything else. And if we do pull in the same direction, we will get there. But we need you to come to us as well. My team is only so big, and there is only so many of us, and there's many organisations out there. So please come to us, please tell us who you are and how we can help. And I'll gladly put it all together for you and feed it back into the higher echelons of the Met as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much. I'm going to use, before I introduce the next section, I'm going to use Chair's prerogative. I know Councillor Selman has been indicating. I want all the Cabinet members to have one opportunity to speak. So I think you were indicating, Caroline, weren't you?
So I'm Caroline Selman, I'm the Cabinet Member for Community Safety at Hackney Council. It was partly, first of all, just to endorse some of what was said about the importance of the opportunities for the police to speak with and engage with and exchange views with young people and members of the community. You really can see the difference when you meet a police officer who's, for example, been on the stop and search monitoring group or trading places at the crib or at different workshops at schools in terms of the change of perspective. The real challenge that comes with that is the high turnover that you have in officers, and also, which was touched on by Florence, where you've also got police officers who are coming from off-borough often, who might not have had the opportunities to have those exchanges of views. Part of that is, and I would endorse what was being said before about the importance of ring fencing and also supporting DWOs, because some people naturally do it, other people don't, and they need support about how best to do it. But it's also about ensuring that there's a Met-wide commitment. You can be doing lots locally, but there needs to be a Met-wide strategy, including with measurables in it, which sends a clear message that it's not just a nice to have, but it's actually fundamental to the success of the job. And the other thing I just wanted to say was, it was slightly picked up on by Florence, but it's about the police reflecting the community that they are serving. Often, when that gets raised, the answer back is talking about the requirement for people to be recruited locally. That helps, but that's not the answer to when you look at what the diversity figures are. The workforce diversity figures is still really very low in terms of BME and in particular black representation. There was a campaign a few years ago round about languages. There needs to be something much more assertive round about going out and speaking to the people that the police want to see in the workforce so that it's genuinely serving the community that they're there to protect.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you for that. We're now going to move on to the last session, which is the logical end of the morning, which is about trying to drill down what more, or what indeed can, City Hall and the Mayor do. So we'll be interested to hear from colleagues around that. Susan, I think you're leading on.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, the question here is, what is the role for City Hall in helping you to prevent violence? And I think it's been touched on, it is a case of helping you because there are so many issues here. There are so many reasons for violence. And one size does not fit all by any means. Somebody said, we want to know if you care. Well, I can assure you everybody around this table does care. We are all absolutely in listening mode. Somebody said, but we want you to do something. So this part of this morning is for you to tell us, in very short terms, what do you think that we can do? And it doesn't all revolve around money. There are lots of other things. I've done a lot of multi-agency approaches when I was leader of Harrow to solving issues, and there is absolutely no doubt that the multi-partnership approaches really do work. And I'm hoping that the gentleman that's going to talk to us next, Christian Aspinall, is going to tell you what he's doing in Lambeth.
I'm going to talk briefly about the public health model, partly because I don't think I can speak as eloquently about direct interventions as our previous speakers, and partly because it's a current term which is being used a lot and it's key to what we're doing in Lambeth, and I think it's key to the long-term solution to this. So firstly, just so everyone's on the same page, what I mean when I say the public health model, in really simple terms, the analogy I like to use is, if there's a cholera outbreak in a village or town, you do two things. You treat the people who are immediately sick, and then you find the dirty water that's causing the sickness in the first place. And what we've tended to do is focus most on the people who are currently sick, who are currently vulnerable when it comes to knife crime, and what we need to do is focus more of our efforts on stopping the illness in the first place. So you've got to do two things at once. You have to work to prevent the immediate risk. So that's the young people right now who are at danger or whose siblings are in danger, those immediate cohorts. But then you also need to fundamentally change the borough and the communities so that it's not happening in the first place, which is a much longer and different thing. So firstly, in terms of what we're doing in Lambeth, one of the main things we're doing is changing the whole system. So traditionally, this is a responsibility of a community safety unit working with their police and maybe some specialist children's services officers. Actually, if you're going to try and make a long-term change, it needs to be everybody's job. It's not just my job as our community safety lead, it's also housing officers, librarians, leisure centres. You have to make every part of the system think about youth violence and about those long-term causes. Secondly, it's got to be locally led partnerships. As many people have already said repeatedly, this cannot be done from the outside, it cannot be done by the statutory service, we all have to be working together. And also when you're talking about changing communities, each community is different. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, and you have to have a partnership at a very local level with those communities. But then finally, underpinning that, there's a single borough approach, which is not just a council plan or even a council police plan. It's a plan for the whole borough of Lambeth, involving our charities, our residents, our housing associations, and the statutory services. I was going to speak briefly about what works, but bearing in mind, conscious of time, I think the most important thing I'd say there is about if you're trying to change a community, the community has to want to change and the community has to lead the change. And that can only be done if the community is not just consulted on what we're doing, but actually part of developing it. I think that's a really important step shift and it's quite challenging, especially for people like me in local government and statutory services, but the fact of the matter is we don't have all the answers, and only when we've got other people around the table can we write the plans and develop the actions that make the most sense and will have the effectiveness. There also need to be long-term. So it's not just about funding the interventions right now, but if you're trying to tackle the things that are causing violence, things like adverse childhood experiences, parenting, mental health, those are not issues that are solved in a 1 or a 2 year program. Our strategy is for 10 years, and to be honest with you, that's an optimistic estimate for some of the things we're looking at here. You need to really commit for a long term if you're going to tackle what's causing this in the first place. And then finally, just to finish up on City Hall, and I thought 2 things that I thought City Hall has a key role to play. The first is linking back to that shift. It needs to shift away from the police and crime agenda. It needs to shift away from the community safety agenda. They and myself have a key role to play, but we're not the entire solution here. And the role for City Hall, in my view, is to champion this across all aspects of London. Because these issues that are causing this in the first place, they're not caused by the police. They're caused by housing, by mental health and things like that. And you can only tackle those if you bring everybody in. The second thing is around that hyper-local approach. If you're trying to change a community, the best people to do that are people already in the community. But it's very, very hard for a very small local group to make the leap from working in one estate to then getting funding or getting national attention or even regional attention. And there needs to, City Hall is an enabler of local practice, working in a direct line through the local council, the local police and the local third sector groups, so that we're not asking people who are doing brilliant work and who are trusted very much by those communities to make that huge leap, that they can work with their local boroughs and deliver solutions that way.
Thank you. I think a lot has been said about the so-called Glasgow model, and that's correct, but we must all remember Glasgow is a completely different area. It is much, much bigger, and therefore looking at it borough-wide may well be the solution. Has anybody else got... Right, okay, who hasn't spoken? You've all... we haven't heard from you, the gentleman at the back.
My name is Nana Benson, and I'm a Southwark Young Advisor. I've got other advisors there, my manager out there, Chloe Newman.
What did he say?
So one of our projects is called Street Base, and what we do is we go out and we engage with young people throughout Southwark, and we want to spread that and do that throughout all other London boroughs. So one thing that I think works well is engaging and interacting with young people, and I think, me personally, I don't think you need funding to talk to young people, to interact with them. So normally, for me personally, when we're out doing Street Base, for me it's easy to interact with them because they might see me and think, do you know what, I can get along with you, I can relate to you, so I can open up to you. And one thing that I think works well is conflict resolution. So it's just a thought, and I'd like to get other people's opinions, but can you imagine 2 opposing gangs and trying to talk to them and sort of like end the conflict and get their feelings as to why they're actually they're, you know, sort of against each other. And I feel like effective communication, like basic skills that effective communication and active listening works well, can work well. So I'd just like everyone to give it a try and try to talk to young people and interact with them, ask them, how do you feel, how do you think things can be done to tackle the problems in our community? Thanks.
Lady next to you. I don't think we've heard from you.
Hi, I'm from the Waltham Forest Young Advisors. So we're trying to roll out the same model of Southwark Young Advisors to do a street base. We did a pilot project of street base for 1 week when there was a spike in youth violence in Waltham Forest, and we had amazing results from it. We engaged with 450 young people in that week alone, and we were out there and we're a face that people can recognise and relate to, and we thought that that was for us to do, to go out there and support our young people and to direct them into positive opportunities and ask them what they want. A lot of them know what they want if you speak to them and say, what is it we can do for you? What would be an ideal solution for you? It's about us being out there and proactively speaking with young people. And we're hoping to roll this out more. And like Nana said, that all the boroughs should have this and be able to have like funding to go out and deliver street base for young people to be there.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman at the back there we haven't heard from. Thank you.
Yeah, hi there. My name's Steve Griffith. I'm from Copenhagen Youth Project based in King's Cross.
I've been looking at a number of things here around education, health, early intervention, rehabilitation, all areas that need a lot of concentration. But I think in all, what I see as probably the biggest problem is trust. I think that the voluntary sector have some amazing projects, and we're all front-facing. We're based in the communities, and we see the people, we know the problems, and we have the solutions. Support is required from the statutory sector. I think we're front-facing. The statutory sector should be behind us, backing us, unblocking some of the blocks that are preventing funding from coming through. I think about things like simple things to the statutory sector, secure emails, information sharing protocols. I look at the Bronze Group, the Gold Group, I look at the Magpie meetings. The representation isn't good enough from the voluntary sector because there's a lack of trust. And, for me, it's about getting behind the voluntary sector organisations, getting behind a lot of the people in this room who spoke very well about the solutions, and they do have the solutions, but they have to be trusted. And that's what I would want to leave it with.
So we'll go back to this gentleman.
Thank you. One of the things that we've done with Father to Father, we used a model called the Asset-Based Community Development Model, ABC. So what we've done is looked in our community what is available without funding and just basically approach. So for instance, and also what we've done was collaborate, set up a mini consortium with other organizations. So Leroy Logan's organization, Voyager, Manhood Academy. We are all organizations within the community that came together and looked at actually what talent do you have? What can you bring in? How can we use your skill set and just come together? From that, we was able to develop a park festival called A Father's Love, where the whole community came in and was able to practice love. It was about talking about empowerment with the young people. It was about parents not feeling that they're on their own and can share their problems but not be judged. And we did that in Hackney this year at Hackney Marshes, and we had about 400 people there, and we're looking to roll it out again. So I think there's something about the asset-based community development, recognizing the community has people with talents and gifts that are willing to give up their time freely, but we just want City Hall to recognize that, and the people in statute to recognize that, not look at us as though we don't have the answers. We do, but work with us. And that's what I would say, basically.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman in the middle, please.
The question is, what is the role for City Hall? Empowerment. Just the one word, empowerment. Encourage and empower all 32 boroughs to have their own violence reduction units. City Hall to have a pan-London violence network, and really to commit to the 10-year plus model that Christian outlined, and support boroughs in unblocking obstacles, coordinating media, encouraging and supporting information sharing, and resourcing the borough violence reduction units. That's the role for City Hall.
Okay, thank you very much. The gentleman at the end, please.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak again. I'm just want to highlight the Youth Violence Commission, the All-Party Commission report. The interim report was actually carried out or published in July. We have a substantive report that's coming out later this month, and it's going to parliamentary conferences. So we hope that we'll get political will, because all of this is not going to happen unless we have real political will, nationally, regionally, as well as locally. And we've already spoken about the public health approach and the violence reduction unit, and that's our first recommendation in the report that we did in July. And so we need to have that political will. So it was very appropriate, and we welcomed the Mayor's announcement yesterday around this, but a lot of it is how that is rolled out and having the right people to deliver it. So we want to support that, and because everyone here can plug into that and get that critical mass of advocates and practitioners and academics to work in all the aspects that's been highlighted, especially what's been done in Lambeth. But like every single initiative that the public health approach relies on is trust and confidence in policing. It's a key part of it. And I know my ex-colleagues do an amazing job. I do understand that. But it's just like stop and search. Stop and search is a blunt tool, but it's sharpened up by community intelligence. Trust and confidence is aligned with community intelligence. The more confident people feel in their police service and other statutory agencies, the more they will give information. And also, the narrative has to change, as has already been said, because I understand the enforcement piece. I understand they've got to, apprehend those who are committing these crimes, especially ones that are grooming, because we haven't spoken about those individuals who groom youngsters into this, and it's extensive and it's very complex. But the key thing, you've got to make young people feel confident and less fearful on the street. They need to feel secure so that they don't fall into the hands of the people that groom them into that. And one thing also is around exclusions. I remember when I was Deputy Borough Commander in Hackney, I used to say to the heads of schools, I say, once those individuals are excluded, they're my problem, because they're 4 to 5 times more likely to be involved in crime when they're outside education. So all I want to know is we understand those key elements, because the elements are there. The Mayor's made the pronouncement yesterday. We've got to hold him to account and his team and how he delivers this, because I think we're at that paradigm shift and that tipping point where we can really make some breakthroughs, because the people of London are desperately seeking it.
Yes, you're quite right. They are indeed, and we are. That's what this board is. This is what Assembly members are here. We're here to hold the Mayor to account. Who hasn't spoken? Has anybody here not spoken? No. In that case, I'll come to you.
Hey again, everyone. All right, so I've got a handful of solutions, and I just want to reel them off so you guys can write them down. So I personally believe that essentially you guys need to encourage business and from an early age, so in school. So, I think we have a one-size-fits-all model when it comes to education. And I think we need to look at the ways that we can engage with young people that aren't necessarily going to go through the traditional means of school and go and end up being, I guess, employees. Some of these guys from early have really entrepreneurial minds, and, you see it in the way that they kind of survive the street. Someone said to me, a lot of people in corporate positions could never spend a day on the street, looking over your shoulder, trying to hustle your way through life and trying to make something of yourself. And we have to use that in a positive way. We have to show them that these same skills that you guys have, that you use to maybe do illegal things, this is how we empower you, which is a word that's been used today. This is how we empower you to create businesses and create, different solutions for you and your family. I also think that we need to think about positive mental health. We always talk about the negative side, depression, anxiety, but we need to think about the affirmations that we're saying to each other today. The I hate you and these really depressing words, but we need to say, what's all these positive words that we're saying to ourselves and we're saying to other people? These are things that are going to change the way that we speak. As they say, there's power in the tongue. There's power in the things that we say over each other, the things that we listen to, that we digest and put into our system. So we need to really challenge that. And I also think that it's about allowing aspirations to flourish from early. So from an early intervention stage, you speak to kids and they say, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a footballer, for example, I want to be an IT developer, whatever it is that they have at an early age. We allow them to be given these opportunities to as I said before, embrace their superpower, because everyone's got something, they've all got a purpose, and we need to just go and be empowered to really chase that. And finally, I'd say, or sorry, not finally, one more point after. There's quite a few people met. Yeah, so. No, I'm going to wrap up very quickly. There's a project called the Formation Project. By a lady called Temi Moale. She's asked me to get involved in that, and that goes back to what Leroy said in terms of having something that we can do, you know, like almost like a manifesto, something we can present to politicians. Because essentially, as we said, this is great. I understand that we have a role to play here, but really, to get this change in, we have to do it on a political level. Finally, self-defense.
Self-defense?
Self-defense. There's an organisation called the Safety Box, run by Nathaniel Peake. And essentially what they've been doing, they've been working in prisons for many years. They've got some serious statistics in terms of turning around, you know, these violence interrupters, essentially. And, you know, we have to look at the fact that this is a problem. Yes, as you said, it's, you know, weapons, they're part of the problem, but we need to look at how we can defend our kids as well.
Sorry, what kind of self-defense, sorry?
So, I think the best way to look at it is, how do you defend yourself against a knife?
Yeah.
You know, and again, I guess essentially, yes, the first case is run away, but if you are in a situation, how are you going to disarm that person from stabbing you in that moment so that you can run? And then teaching them about, you know, first aid and all these different things that are going to allow them to save lives, because we have to empower the young people that are going through this every day. This is not going to affect them for probably about 5 years. Let's be real. We need to think about what we're going to do tomorrow that's going to help these young people to really live, and then kind of go to some of the solutions that we're talking about doing in tomorrow, basically.
There's a real canter through. Make sure you write to us later so that we captured all those, because there's loads of good stuff there.
Don't worry, it's fine.
I'll come to you in a minute. Can I just, the gentleman at the back, can I ask one very quick question? You said it would be a good idea to have a mediator, in effect, between gangs. I mean, that's something quite different. Exactly who would that be? I mean, if you've got two gangs as an example, I mean, it sounds like a really good idea, but who would you have to mediate? Who would the communities think would be a good idea to mediate?
People that they will listen to. So they might. No, I don't really want to sound rude, but if gangmen was to look at you and you was to sort of interact with them and say, look, you should come off the road, they probably wouldn't listen to you. And that's just a fact. But they might look at ex-gang members, or they might engage with them, and they might think, do you know what? I don't want to die. Do you know what I mean? I want to stay alive. And there's gang members out there that I've spoken to that have said that they've had former gang members talk to them and kind of be their role model, encourage them, come off the road. Like, there's better things out there.
Okay, all right then, thank you. It's just a different idea and it'd be interesting. Let's jump in.
Cool. Could you sort it so you can hear me? Just quickly, briefly, to the young king over there, love that trailer thought. Please, guys, stop using the gang word. I beg of thee. Every single individual who claims to know about youth work, or stop using the gang word. I don't care if they even claim they were in gangs. You have to have a prison to the street mindset before you even become a gang member. Most of them Bloods and Crips who've been killing each other from the 70s, they have a mindset before joining those gangs. And if you're going to look at the system of how Bloods and Crips came to be, brother, we went from Black Panthers to Bloods and Crips. Stop using the gang narrative. Eradicate that word from this youth field, please, everybody, because it's not fair. It further reinforces a stereotype of people that dress and look like me. That gang word. So no, mediation, great. We've heard his points. He's a young man, he's heard his points. I've heard his points over 10 years now. I've came up here not long ago, just said, there's people who I've stabbed, who have stabbed me, who we could all be here now and talk about ways to go forward. Can any of you do that? I've asked the question. No one's given me the answer. I'm hearing the same old rhetoric. And we're sitting here and we're saying, and we're clapping. No disrespect to anyone here. I really don't mean to undermine anyone. I've been doing this for years. I can bring every person I've stabbed, every person who stabbed me without going to the police to get justice. We resolved our own issues. Why are we not getting the work done? Because you, no disrespect, I'm not saying individuals, but you guys as a system in City Hall, you're not putting your your money where the people who can, everyone here's talking about talking to the guys.
Well,
I am the guy you're talking about. I brought guys from Holly
Right,
Street. One second, let me just make a point so you guys understand the work.
Well,
I did a
we
book
do
launch in
understand.
Hackney. Sorry, no, I don't think you do. Sorry,
we're
one second.
just
I'll leave
asking.
1 second. Sorry, just 1 second. We did a book launch in Bernie Grants. I'm just trying to show you the evidence of the work. I had Hackney and Tottenham boys in the same room. Fact, you know I'm not lying. I don't see people putting this in the media. I don't see you lot talking like this is something, a new idea, fresh ideas. Tell me Wally, she had an event, a company called Get Out of the Gang. It was only from Reading Prison to the Street that she understood things about child trauma and learned, and now is able to speak on the things that I'm educating. I'm saying stop silencing me out, stop putting me on the same level as people who only started work the other day, and hear a message that's got a solution. I'm actually begging today, whether you don't fund me or not, I need to be allowed into the schools with people who understand this concept. I know you're trying to cut me short, but I'm finished right now. I need the support. I don't care about the money.
No,
just
we've
let
got
us
that.
into the
If
facilities.
I can just stop you, because we definitely got that message in the first, and I shall be, for one, looking at the book to see, because we are all interested in any solution, because every single one of us in this room wants to put an end to this violence.
I've got your book.
Right, who else is...
I've got your book. We've got your book.
Right.
No, I've got this now. You sit yourself down. I want your book. I want to take it home.
This gentleman here.
Go down. This is fine. This is cool. Right, next one. Go on, Susan.
Yeah, I know. Well, he's not been here.
Yes.
Right.
As the brother said.
Excuse me. Look, let's listen to everybody, because everybody's got a different angle to come from.
Once the brother's actually gotten off his chest, because he's right. A lot of people have spoken today. There's many solutions.
Yes.
One of the situations that I've seen in our community is that there's a lot of new builds, there's a lot of new things being built in our community. I am not sure whether the people who have lived there over 30, 40 years, 20 years, have an invested interest in these builds, whether it's a new gym, whether it's a new community hall, whether it's a new, whether it's a calf, whether it's whatever it is. There has to be some way where we can actually, like I say, prevention is better than cure. So if it was a community center that was built, and family members actually earn from, and charities, local charities actually earn from these new builds, from these new gyms, then we might see a lot of change. We might see an incentive for actually families to send their kids to these places, where in turn it actually invests back into the families and the communities. So I see a lot of new things being built up in these communities, but the actual people that live there don't even have any communication. We don't necessarily need money from the government. People can come to me. People can come to a lot of our peers who have a lot of money now. Like I say, we are successful as well. And they can come to us, but we don't have the jurisdiction, we don't have the authority, and we don't have the access to take these places, take over these places, and actually in turn utilize it for our communities. So that might be one solution that we can look into. And a lot of these private companies have access to our communities and building things that we necessarily didn't ask for. But if they are entering our communities, we need to have some sort of invested interest, which in turn delivers income and support for the families in the communities.
For one other person.
I just thought I thought it would be really great to hear from the last voice. You've been indicating you GLA peer guys, youth. Come on. I think that'd be nice to finish on a good note there. If that's fine with you, guys.
Well, we're the Peer Outreach team. First, I want to say thank you to City Hall for giving me a platform, for helping me out of my situation and whatever I went through in life. But what I wanted to say is, obviously, we are a team of young people helping these young people, so we sort of need ammunition as well from City Hall. And I think what everyone has said today, and what that man is saying, that's just passion. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, like, obviously, it's a build-up of a lot of feelings and a lot of things that need to be said out. But all in all, we want to talk about solutions, and what I think one thing that you could do, because it's not all just people on the streets, it's also the young people who are, have severe mental health issues, who suffer from PTSD, all of these issues. You need to try and access them as well. One thing that I've not heard today is online services, maybe do an online directory of services that are already existing, get some people to do some mapping. You've got the Peer Outreach team, we can take that work on. but maybe you can map some map around services around areas so young people can actually just go online themselves and be proactive and find things that help them. So it's not all down to the government. So then they can find these, you know, local organisations or whatever helping. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Okay, that's brilliant. You happy with that? Yeah? Okay. Right, I'd like to thank you all for that. I think you've all had, all those that wanted to speak really did have the opportunity, and we're grateful for that. We're just going to, and I'm just going to finish briefly, tiny bit of business here. Item 6, can I ask the committee to note the progress and work programme and date of next meeting. But lastly, again, massively thankful for what you've done today. If you haven't been able to say something you wanted to, write to me, and we're going to be publishing a report, and we're going to be using this stuff. So watch out for it, and please do keep in touch with us. Thank you very much.